Seth is on the phone, so. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting of the Economic Development Committee meeting will please come to order. Ken Kraft is absent. Seth is here by phone. John is acoustic, and myself are members of the committee. First, courtesy of the floor. I don't know that anyone signed in. Do we? Oh, we don't have one for that? Oh, I forget that. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to any item this evening? Okay. Just come on up, yeah, name and who you represent.
My name is Jennifer Cotto, and I'm here on behalf of the Southside Film Festival. We'd like to thank you for your generosity in years past and ask that you reconsider the grant amount allocated for us this year. The Southside Film Festival is a staple of the Bethlehem arts community. We have consistently provided quality, independent films for the patrons of our festival since our inception almost 15 years ago. We have had contributing filmmakers from almost all 50 states and over 120 different countries. In the past, we have visiting filmmakers from Russia, the Ukraine, Canada, and the Netherlands travel to Northampton County just for our festival. We've also had many local filmmakers contribute and participate, and many filmmakers return year after year because of the family atmosphere of our festival provides. Last year, our attendance was up 14% overall, which we believe is a testament to the dedication of the festival as a destination for visitors to Northampton County. Every year, we work to promote local businesses with our Flasher Pass discount program and our yearly benefit dinner at Molinari's. The Southside Film Festival is entirely planned, staffed, and executed by a team of dedicated volunteers. We have no paid staff or board members. In the past, we have collaborated with the Charter Arts School, Donegan Elementary School, Godfrey Daniels, the Southside Arts District, Discover Lehigh Valley, and the Ice House Tonight. We also run an animation workshop and a free children's film festival to engage young filmmakers and local schools. Southside Film Festival is dedicated to promoting ourselves as a local festival with international flair. This grant will help us increase visitors to Northampton County and promote a long-running festival. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, then we will move on. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Come on, hi.
My name is Bridget George. I'm the Executive Director of the Bach Choir of Bethlehem, and I wanted, having the last 2 years come and appealed here, I want to just say how extremely grateful I am that the recommendation for the Bach Choir is finally back to what we were getting really before the recession, or finally back to that level. And we are so appreciative. The funding you have been giving us has really helped us reimagine and expand the festival. The audiences are expanding. The involvement of young people is very much expanding, and we have people coming from 31 different states who are not only audience members but help contribute. They bring contributed income as well as earned income to Northampton County. And we, on the other end of the spectrum, the age spectrum, we were thrilled this past year to have our very first Rhodes Scholar group, which is a group, they used to be called Elder Hostel, but it was a group of 25 people from, again, many, many different states who, when they came here, we're finally on the roster for Rhodes Scholars, the Bach Festival. They not only came to the entire festival, but they had activities about the history of Bethlehem steel, the history of the Moravian heritage and culture in Bethlehem. And many of them said they just felt like they'd fallen into a pot of gold when they came. Much. So I just wanted to give my thanks to the council for the recommendation.
Thank you so much for coming. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, we'll move on to the first Item on the agenda, the 2018 Hotel Tax 2000 recommendations.
If I may, Madam Chair, just before that, we'd like to provide you with our regular success story. This is very short.
Okay, sure.
Frank Brooks
Great.
has a story from Hellertown.
Good evening, council members. Unfortunately, the borough manager of Hellertown has a scheduling conflict and would have liked to be here to share this news about a successful joint venture between the CDBG program and open space. Council approved the community development funding for a project that would provide ADA access and complete a link on the Salkin Trail in the borough of Hellertown. My first impression of the project, that was a small project in scope, but it opened up a large area of the trail. As construction ran into a water condition, some additional engineering was necessary to overcome a waterlogged footing. This footing was a necessary project piece to complete the access to the Salkin Trail. So there was a budget shortfall of $13,000, so Dced reached out to Open Space and Brian Cope to secure trail funds to cover this shortage. Open Space not only provided the funding to cover the footing problem, but has provided Hellertown with some additional funds for signage. The trail has been open for about a month now, and during a recent monitoring visit, I made on a very hot Wednesday morning in August. There were over 50, as I affectionately refer to them as Wednesday walkers, that I counted on the trail, smiling and happy that it was open. I thought it was an unbelievable amount of folks that had used it. The local merchants I talked to report an uptick in business as thirsty and hungry hikers naturally provide a boost to the local business. The additional signage would go a long way in helping the hikers find a trail where the local businesses are located. I have a note from the Hellertown Borough Manager that I would like to read. On behalf of the Hellertown residents, we thank the Council and Open Space for their support in obtaining this funding to accomplish this project. Thank you.
We love success stories.
Thanks, Frank. More good things thanks to your support. On to the request for the consideration of approval and a move on to full council, we hope, for its approval, the 2018 Hotel Room Rental Tax Grant Program Award recommendations. Karen, would you like to address the slate?
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I am recommending to you the slate that's being recommended for Hotel Tax Grant Awards. This slate is being offered by the review committee, which consisted of 6 independent individuals, Tim as our liaison and myself as the facilitator of that committee. I am under the impression that you received this slate at the last meeting.
Yes.
And I ask that you take it into consideration and forward it on to County Council for approval. Are there any questions?
I'd like to point out just a couple of things. If you look down, Blue Valley Farm Show and Nature Nurture Center, those 2 projects, as well as the Plainfield Township Farmers Fair, which is not on your sheet, those projects have been absorbed in part by the Ag Connect funding that you approved last year. We're covering 50% of that, and then the hotel tax would cover the other 50%, which is why those are reduced as they are. Then in addition, DCED recommends that council allocate $15,000 for the Miracle League and $10,000 for Stevens Place on an annual basis for 3 to 5 years from general funds. We say that because we put it in the 2018 budget under 30800, which is a general fund location. This takes those 2 programs out of competition for tourism dollars. It's obvious to us over the number of years that you've invested in these programs that you find them necessary and valuable, and so we recommend that you create separate line items for them and fund them in that way. That's our sense that this is the council's inclination. We'd like to suggest that, and if the committee approves, please move that on to full council. We also recommend that council allocate $100,000 annually from one of several different places. It could come from general funds, could come from the annual hotel tax 2000, or the hotel tax 2005, which is being proposed tonight at council, or a combination of these funds. As the county's annual investment in the Northampton County Historical and Genealogical Society. This will bypass the contingency fund controversy that happens almost every year. That this is an organization of interest to the council and of value to the council, and by setting a separate line item, it will represent the county's support of that, taking it out of the competitive market again in the tourism dollars. So we recommend those changes be forwarded on to full council, and we ask your approval of the slate that's been put before you. And also move on to the.
And what was the amount for Stevens Place again?
Stevens Place was 10,000. Miracle League was 15. But those are options. Those are just numbers I put as placeholders. It's really up to council what you'd like.
We haven't given that much in the years past.
You gave 15,000 last for the Miracle League, 10,000
right,
last gift for
10,
Stevens Place.
I thought it was 5.
And,
sorry.
5 in the previous year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 5 in the previous year. But our recommendation is more importantly that you allocate a line item for those separate from your contingency fund and separate from the competitive hotel tax, because these really aren't tourism activities. They're more social benefit organizations. So our recommendation is you take it out of that cycle, allocate those funds for 3 or 5 years, whatever the council likes, and move that suggestion forward, if you will. Okay?
Yeah. So Tim, thank you. Placing recurring items year after year in the contingency fund frustrated me to no end.
Right, and we agree. It's just if you're going to do it, you may as well make a line item for it. And it seemed to us in Dced that the sense of the council was that these were 3 important organizations. The first 2, of course, are social benefit organizations, and the third is the county's historical society. So, and obvious from other giving that you've made to that organization, you find it of high value. So it just seemed reasonable for us to make that recommendation. If not, we'll have to find some other funding for it, because we did not consider that in the limited funding that we had for hotel tax.
So, Tim, the Miracle League and the Stevens Place, I'm clear in my head that you're putting that on a line item in the budget that you guys are putting together.
Yes, yeah, you'll see that come budget time.
Are you doing the same thing for that $100,000 for?
No, we didn't do that because we didn't want to presume council would do it any particular way. We wanted to make recommendation to you, which is our responsibility, but we didn't want to tell you where you had to take the money from. That's really up to you. You can do it from general funds. You can do it from a combination of hotel tax funds. But I would recommend, and DCED recommends, doing it over 3 or 5 years so that you don't have to revisit this every year unless you choose to.
I mean, I think that why you want to get this, and I'm not saying I'm totally against it, but why we want to get it for a multiple-year commitment is this is principally going to go to a staff person, isn't it?
Yeah, our recommendation is to put it for operating. One of the challenges that Andy Daub mentioned the last time he made a presentation to full council was that not having that regular level of funding made it difficult for them to hire staff who would stay on, and they were really being drawn away for benefits and for other reasons. So having this steady stream of funding, having that steady support by council from the county to the County Historical Society would help them stabilize their organization. And perhaps beyond the first year or 2 or 3 that they would need that for salaries, they may be able to apply it to capital projects or other things. That's why our recommendation is to put it into operating and let them decide.
So we have no action on Miracle League, Stevens Place, or
None. We wanted you to,
tonight.
yeah, that's correct.
When the budget comes in,
Yes.
Miracle League and Stevens Place
Will be in
we could
30800,
We could
yes.
adjust those via the budget
Yep.
resolution process.
Right, and then
we would have, it would be up to us
Yes.
to actually put in a line item.
That's our recommendation.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Right.
Okay.
Peg.
And Mr. Kusick.
As I looked over this, the one that popped out at me, and it popped up again last year, the Easton Emergency Squad, medical care tent and trailer. In what way is that related to tourism-related activity?
All of these
please
were
explain that to me?
discussed. Mark, you want to? You were involved in that conversation.
So this is a support infrastructure for the events that occur in downtown Easton. So they have, I don't know how many festivals every year. They want to put like an emergency station, a tent there to serve those people. I mean, you have 85,000 people down there for Bacon Fest, in addition to Garlic Fest, tree lighting, clam jam. There's a whole bunch of things. So we view this as infrastructure
I'm sorry, but
supporting
I think that's a stretch. I mean, what stops the folks from Bethlehem to say, well, can you give us a grant for our police department and fire and ambulance for Music Fest?
No, I can't.
So, at what point do we, so I will not be, and Easton Emergency Squad does a terrific job, and they cover my township, but I just don't see that as tourism and tourism related. And
That's fine.
and then on the other hand, the young lady from the Southside Film Institute was here, and to me, that's clearly a tourism-related event. People would probably
all
come
of
from
the
outside.
all of the evaluations were done by the team,
Okay.
and they were given the criteria ahead of time, and all of the individual applications were put up against those criteria,
Okay.
and they were prioritized. And then we went down and funded the highest priorities down to a level where we ran out of money. And so it's very possible that their priority wasn't up in the upper echelon. We also did not fund programs that were seeking debt service payments
Right.
or anything like that. So they had to meet the tourism criteria first and foremost, the legislative criteria, but then they had to meet the priorities that the team evaluated, and they did a good job. They worked hard to determine. I mean, when you get $1.5 million worth for a few $100,000 worth of payments, you have to make some hard decisions. So all of those got those hard decisions.
I understand, and as
If we
I
could have
always
funded
say,
them all, we would have.
these are subject to amendment during the county budget process
Absolutely.
in December. So,
The council always has the option. Yes.
Thank
Have
you.
we given the emergency squad for that same thing last year and the year before, or
Yeah.
is it something?
my recollection is that the grant last year was a community investment partnership grant
Yes.
for
an ambulance.
an ambulance, an
right.
actual.
Right. And here again, all of these considerations were raised during the process of evaluation of all of the grant applications. And we focused on each one moving forward and then weighed the entire batch in a priority way. I mean, it's a challenge to do it.
Sure.
You really basically have to have everybody holding up one part of the ship, and not drown while you're doing it. So they did a yeoman's job. I got to get out of these nautical references. So,
No, they're good.
yes.
You want to talk about who was on the committee?
Yes. Who was on the committee? Why, Karen, it was your committee.
The committee consisted of Alyssa Barrett. She is from Third Street Alliance for Women and Children. Mark Hartney, our administrator at DCED. Tony Pristash. He is involved in a lot of community organizations. He also serves on the Gaming Authority Committee. He has also served on the Hotel Tax Committee and is very familiar with the process for many years. Michael Sturchik is the president of Discover Lehigh Valley. Our councilman here, Mr. Werner. David Hughes, our finance person for DCED. And then Tim served as liaison and myself as facilitator. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
No, not at this time. Let's go on to the SIP recommendations.
Okay. Mike?
Good evening. I'm sorry, let me adjust this. All right. Good evening. Before you see the recommendations for the 2017 SIP program, in the spreadsheet before you, we have all 35 applicants listed, their requests, and the recommended amounts. They are in no particular order other than alphabetical, so what you see before you is not a ranking or priority. It's just an alphabetical order with those recommended for funding and those that are not recommended for funding. All applications were reviewed by a committee of 6 individuals, Councilman Warner, Councilman Phillips, Director Herlinger, Administrator Hartney, also Amanda Roundenbush from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and Andrew Kleiner from LVEDC.
Could you just review where this money, what's the revenue stream for this?
This is table games money, so we have $700,000 that we advertised. We had a little bit of money rolled over from previous years from projects that came in a little under budget or that was unutilized. So we ended up awarding approximately $730,000 in this round. Each application was scored against 6 points, a 6-point criteria list. So the advisory committee did a very good job of keeping their reviews very systematic. And once we got a ranking, we went down the list and awarded money as much as we could going down the list of the highest to lowest ranking. So I ask you to, this is for your review. Next month we'll be coming back for approval. So if you have any questions, we can entertain it now, or you can always contact me or Mr. Hartney or Mr. Herlinger.
Yeah, I just want to say that I was on this committee, and we spent 2 days. We spent time preparing for those 2 days, and there was a lot of give and take, back and forth. There was a clear set of rules. This was my second year doing. I was very, very happy with the process. Some of these I'm in love with, some I'm not in love with, but through my participation in that committee and the environment that we created with the give and take, I personally stand behind these. So, not saying that whatever else. I mean, I stand behind it. I did look at each one of these, and I can stand behind it. I'll give one thing, like the facade program. I am not the biggest supporter of the facade program, but a lot of people are. I went through it, followed the rules, and I do support the money that we're putting into the facade program. I had a lot of snide remarks. I had a lot of fun knocking it, but when we went through it, majority ruled. I felt comfortable going with the facade program. I know a lot of people in the boroughs, are in love with it. They feel like they really need that, and I do support that. So I'm just giving that, for what it's worth. Spent a lot of time with it, and also, I'm not one of these guys who say, well, I recommended it, give or take it all or take nothing. I always think that people have the individual right to look at individual items and question them and discuss them. But I'm just giving my testimony that I'm behind all of them.
Thank you, Councilman Phillips.
I'm sorry, I did go out of order. Are there any other questions on SIP? Before we go to the 205 Hotel. Thank you.
Yes, I apologize. You should have picked that up. With the ordinance for the redesigned facilities and tourism hotel room rental tax 2005 grant program will be introduced this evening at full council. The Department of Community and Economic Development encourages that the committee members endorse the program. It will be administered by us, and it's been shared with you over the last several months of its design and development, and thank you very much for the input you've given. It's helped us create what we think is going to be a really effective program.
Okay.
Questions?
I'd like to start by saying, first of all of this is great. And I know we need a plan for the hotel tax, the 2005, because, our promise has been fulfilled. But Da Vinci Center came as a whole new project. And, I sat on this council for many years, and I can still remember Wayne Grube saying, everything goes to Lehigh County. Well, you know what? We have a chance now to bring a shining star to Northampton County, and we need to make a commitment here. And I think we have a cart before the horse a little bit, especially with this ordinance. And I want to have a plan. I want to know what the county is going to do to bring Da Vinci and make Da Vinci reality in Northampton County. And I have trouble voting for any hotel tax or for anything until I have a plan that we can at least tweak and work on to see how this is going to come to Northampton County. So I think this ordinance needs to be put off at least 1 month. That's my opinion. We have to hold out until October, and October is going to be DaVinci, is going to be our Economic Development Committee meeting. We'll focus on DaVinci. So,
Madam Chair, I
yes.
think you're absolutely right that we need to know what we're voting on, and we need to know the methodology. I'm delighted to say that today we received, and the county executive received, a very large information packet from
Yes,
the
I got
DaVinci
that.
Science City folks, and the county executive himself is having that packet evaluated far beyond what we could do in our department. When he returns that information, then we'd be able to make a reasonable recommendation on not only whether or not to fund. Certainly, it's a fascinating project, but how that might be done as well.
that's what we need, a plan.
I would like to recommend to you, though, that if we are allowed to put the FATE program, which I called it, the Facilities and Tourism Enhancement, if we're allowed to put that in place, then if council chooses a different route to funding, we would have this in place. We'd be able to get applications in. We'd be able to get additional funding for new tourism-related marketing and capital activities without slowing down the process. That's our recommendation. Certainly, council can do what it likes.
I would ask, it's my hope that council doesn't come up with, sponsor this ordinance tonight, that we wait until the October meeting to sponsor this ordinance and get the ball rolling when we have a better idea of how DaVinci is going to fit into the 2005 hotel tax. Mr. Cusick.
A lot of time and effort did go into the creation of this ordinance, and I'm supportive of it. You know, if we need to wait a little bit, that's fine. But since you raised the issue about the DaVinci and that plan that came over, I wanted to find out if you could clarify something for Mr. Hurlinger. I got a copy of the letter, and one of the bullet points says, it's an introduction, your name is mentioned, Mr. Hartney's, and then it says, there are a couple of points I would like to clarify regarding the project. Number one, although the 18-month development phase that we are currently working on in partnership with the City of Easton is formally called the Feasibility Planning Period, it is in reality a master planning phase that is being conducted, which is common practice in projects of this scale, et cetera, and so forth. It's signed by Lynn Erickson. Now, my concern is this. I went back into the budget minutes, and numerous times your description, and I believe it was her description to us, was that the $50,000 grant that we authorized was for a feasibility planning grant.
That's
so
true.
my question is, was that $50,000 for a feasibility planning grant, or is it going towards what is in fact a master plan?
Our understanding was it was for the feasibility planning grant. At the time, the funding that was in hand was very low. It was about $200,000, I think, out of a $1.2 million total master plan need. Our understanding at that time was that there were still preliminary feasibility study activities, surveys, and such that needed to be done. That's what that money was intended to support, and in fact, we're going to monitor that grant and make sure that it is used specifically for those items listed in the scope of work. They have since, the DaVinci Science City organization has since raised well over $800,000, I believe, and they're moving forward with the master plan activities that come subsequent to the activities that were funded by council. Lynn Erickson is here. Lynn, would you like to
Lynn or Joe?
That's my perspective, sir. Would you like to address that?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to the question. I appreciate it. I think it's a terminology question.
Yes.
We did quite a bit of work before we entered into the 18-month, whatever we want to call it, master planning or feasibility, memorandum of understanding with the City of Easton. We wouldn't have gone forward with that kind of memorandum without a lot of study and marketing, studies, research on development of a business plan, looking at other best practices, and selection of a site. and quite a bit of work, over a year's worth of work occurred before that 18-month period. When we went forward with the 18-month period, I'll say quite honestly, our board wanted to use the term feasibility rather than master planning phase because we weren't agreeing to put the shovel in the ground. So it's whatever wording you want to use. It's a terminology kind of question. It's a wording question. Nothing has changed in terms of the total scope of activity that we're doing.
But my question was pretty straightforward. Did the $50,000 grant go towards the feasibility study, or is it going towards a master plan?
It's going towards the master planning phase.
So it was then either it was misrepresented to us or there was some sort of error, because what you're telling me now is not what I heard when the grant was issued back as part of the 2017 budget.
We've been using the term for a memorandum of understanding in that 18-month period with the City of Easton. We've been calling it a feasibility planning period. We were clarifying in this document to just make the point that we're quite far along into the whole study and research effort, and we're, if to be compared with another project, we're much further along than just feasibility, so to speak. When we made the request, yes, the 18-month period, as I said, with the City of Easton, we're calling feasibility. In this document, we're trying to show that before what we're currently calling, because our board requested that we call it feasibility, before what we're calling feasibility occurred, we did a whole bunch of other work in advance of that period.
Well,
the grant we have right now is for this, during this 18-month period with the City of Easton, to do a consumer demand study as a part of a marketing research effort that we plan to start when the architects finish. I have actually here a signed document that I got back from Tim and Mark. We're requesting an extension of that grant from December to the end of March so we can utilize the drawings from the architects to do the consumer demand study.
Well, I mean, to me, there's a big difference between a feasibility study and a master plan. And I'm disappointed that I believe it was misrepresented to us. So thank you.
That wasn't the intent. Thank you.
And Mr. Cusick, we do have a scope of work with the contract for that $50,000, and DCED will hold Da Vinci to the scope of work. So that was the approved activity is encapsulated in the scope of work. So no money will be spent beyond that scope. Sir.
I agree with Ms. Ferrara that we're getting the cart before the horse. I do think that if we decide to fund Da Vinci, and to the level that we decide to fund Da Vinci, it's going to come through this 2005 revenue. I see this as it would be encumbering that, and we would have to do away with this and do another one. It seems to me that, you know, I would like to see a recommendation from the administration on our support for Da Vinci, and then I would entertain this ordinance. And if that support, and if I agreed with your plan for that support, had nothing to do with 2005 hotel taxes, then I would say, yeah, let's do. I mean, I like this. This is good stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it supports what I think may happen with Da Vinci. So if this, I would like to see this not get sponsored, but I can't stop that. But if it does get sponsored, I will make a motion to table it, because I don't think we're ready for this yet.
That's certainly within your purview. The recommendation from DCED is that because we don't know how Da Vinci would be funded, if it would be funded, that to curtail one program in anticipation of spending that money on something which you don't know that you're going to do that might not be the best choice, but certainly you guys have the final say, and you can
and
certainly
even if
make
there
those
is a
choices.
clause in here that does say, that we can do whatever, for Da Vinci.
Yes, in Section 5, there's a clause that says that with special resolution, you can change the amount of money and the length of time. So you could give the highest amount of money possible over the greatest length of time just by special resolution. We wrote that in specifically at the request of a couple of council members who didn't want to see this presented in a kind of a limiting sort of way.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with, and I just feel that it's the cart before the horse. I would just like to see where we're going with Da Vinci, and I want to support Da Vinci in the very most effective way we can, and rather wait till next month.
Okay.
If I could just say one more thing.
Go
I
ahead.
understand that you have limitations in regards to when you do grants and monies. One of the things, not that I'm preaching to the choir, but I've learned this. You really are concerned that you're giving money to an organization that has a really, 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 really high probability of success.
Yeah.
Right.
Sustainability is important in our
Absolutely.
evaluation.
And you in October, this coming up next month,
Right.
so you're probably not going to have that success to say.
It's in the county executive's hands.
Yeah.
It's out of ours at the
Yeah,
moment. So.
okay. Yeah, so I just think right now this is probably premature. I would like to just see it wait a little bit.
Okay. Would you like us to move on?
So a question kind of off of what Mr. Krusek was saying. So was there a feasibility test done, and are there results?
There was initial, according to what Lynn just said, there was initial feasibility study that was presented to her board. The board approved that study to move forward with a larger feasibility study and particular surveys. The $50,000 that was requested had specific applications for that funding, and we have it in a scope of work in the contract. So our responsibility for DCED is to enforce the scope of work in the contract through monitoring and through the reports that Da Vinci will be turning back into DCED, and we'll be bringing up to you and let you know that everything is being followed as the funding is being spent on the scope of work proposed and nowhere else.
It's a more in-depth feasibility study is the way I view it, and almost more in-depth.
It's a much more complex
More
program than
complex.
just...
Well, I realize that, but are you
more.
skipping finishing step one to get to step two?
No. They had a huge feasibility study to get to the point that, and now then they went into this next feasibility study /
Yeah, it's a bit semantic.
it's semantics.
I don't think it is just semantics. When you're doing a business, before you can go to the finish the second step,
Right.
So you can't get 3/4 of the way through feasibility and say we're going to the master plan and making sure that works without having all the numbers back.
It's like, what's in a name arose by any other name. Okay.
Just to follow up, this letter is fairly clear. It says the feasibility study for the project was prepared in early 2016 and presented to the Da Vinci Board of Trustees for review. Excerpts were provided, etc.
Okay.
So based on what I read in this letter, and I wasn't an English major, I was a math major, so maybe I'm wrong. It's fairly clear to me in plain English that the feasibility study, if this letter is in fact
A
correct,
feasibility
a
study.
feasibility study has been completed.
As part of a feasibility planning period,
And
which includes further
in
work.
reality, it is a reality that a master planning phase that is being conducted.
Right.
So the feasibility study, according to this letter, and I said, I wasn't an English major, the feasibility study is done. What's going on now is a master planning phase.
Right, and as I understand it, a portion of which includes the preliminary feasibility, post this feasibility study that went to the trustees, additional feasibility work that has to be done, and that's what the $50,000 is scoped out to do. That's our understanding, and that was our understanding when we presented the project to you.
And
And that's what we're responsible for keeping.
And I trust that our own department will be watching the dollars to make sure that they are expended
Absolutely.
the way they were meant to be.
That's our responsibility to you
That's
and to
right.
the people of Northampton
And you
County.
will do that.
Let
I
me
trust that
let me
you
jump
will
in
do
here
that.
real fast, if I may, Madam. I've worked with Mark and Tim.
And the mayor would like to speak.
I'll defer.
Go ahead.
No, I'll defer.
Go ahead. Bob, do you want to?
No, I'll
Okay.
I was able to pull up our grant application for the hotel tax grant, and I'm reading in a paragraph from the narrative. The next step, this is when it was 1 year, we've just extended it to 18 months. The next step in the development of the Da Vinci Science City is a 1-year feasibility planning period. During the feasibility planning period, which will be completed, and time frame, the City of Easton and the Da Vinci Science Center will work together to fully assess the feasibility of funding and operating the project. Major elements of the feasibility planning period include the completion of a master plan for the facility and programs to be offered. So I'm reading
there
that,
it is.
directly from the
Okay.
proposal that we gave to you.
Okay.
In fact, the architects are
Thank you.
the first phase of that aspect.
Had the same thing.
And to assure Mr. President, I have the same concerns you have. I may not refer to it as a fish tank, but I do have the same concerns you do. because I believe in the Science Center versus more than the aquarium anyway. I personally have requested that feasibility study be redone. It was done in 16 as a possibly a dream. That dream is becoming a little bit more of a reality. I need, and you need, as a council member here, some validation of the 600,000 people per year. And that's what we're doing. We're validating that with a second study now that it's more secure and more developed as to what's going to be in it, what are the different phases of it. And I need to know, before I expend any money from the city, that yes, we're going to get X number of people, because my numbers are based on they must get more than 450,000. It's the only way I can afford the investment we're making. If they get 600,000, I can do that even faster. My job is I never kick the can down the road. I like to pay things off. For example, our current city halls, we did a 15-year note on that, not a 30-year note. I don't believe in doing that. So I agree with you. Just understand it. This second, if you want to call it a second feasibility study, is to really validate the numbers to make sure that 2 years later they're actually going to work. That's what they're for. But it is. You're right, it is a master planning period now, because we are starting to develop the floor plan and everything else. We can't do a traffic study, for example, if we don't know where the entrance to the building is. We can't do a parking plan if we don't know how many people are going to come. So we want to validate that number. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions?
I was going to.
Go ahead,
I had
I'm sorry,
I had the
Mr.
same.
Marner.
I had the same paragraph that Lynn had regarding for an answer to Mr. Cusick, but I'll add two more things. One, I've worked closely with Tim and Mark and Michael and a number of other people in these committee meetings, and I've attended most of the meetings that involve the financials and the projections. Okay, and I have full faith and confidence in Tim and Mark in terms of what we're going to do and the determination of how that money is going to be spent or not spent. Okay. Second part of this is this process is fluid. This is not this is a major. This isn't a downtown hotel going up. This is a major. I shouldn't do that. That's somebody else does that stuff. It's a major project. It's huge. Yeah, it's a major project.
Are you studying?
Don't write that down. And it takes a lot more than just a few months of planning, even a year of looking at this project. So I'm in agreement. Maybe we should. It's okay to take a couple steps back and give it a little bit more time. I even think Lynn and Joe would agree that it's not a problem to give it time, knowing the amount of effort that has gone in, and also the amount of investment that's going to come into this program. So I don't think anyone's questioning the concerns for the fiscal responsibility. But I also think that we have something here that could be greater than all of us and not know it. So let's not stab it in the heart right away. Let's work with it. Okay.
That's why when I said that I thought that we were putting this 2005 ahead. You know, I've met with Lynn a couple times, and I get the information, I get the numbers. But what I always tell her before I leave is, I'm not doing anything until I get Tim's recommendation, because I'm going to evaluate your recommendation. Now that's kudos to you.
It is. Thank
Because
you very much.
you know, 18 months ago, I wouldn't have been in that position. I would have thought I'd be in a better position to make up. I was smarter than everybody. But
Very
now
generous.
I'm not doing anything until I hear from you.
And I have to wait to hear from the county executive.
Yeah, I got
who's
that.
doing
Yeah, I
a
understand that.
Deep dive on this.
Any other thoughts, questions?
If
Okay,
not,
we're
then
ready for our LERTA.
an ordinance for county council concerning the city of Bethlehem and Bethlehem School District. I'll let Mark handle this one because he's our economic development guru.
Thank you very much. Last month, we presented a draft ordinance to you, and you got the really in-depth presentation from the city of Bethlehem. You should have the ordinance included in your package. There was one, what I'll call a minor modification that we as DCED staff inserted into the ordinance. Section 4, letter C, I think it's on page 13, 12 or 13. We asked that a section be added. The city of Bethlehem's abatement is 10% because they've committed to putting in $50,000 a year into this district to support activities for the LERTA. We were okay with that. We just wanted to make sure that that 50% or that $50,000 went in. So there's a clause in there under letter C that says if they don't contribute that 50%, the county's abatement would scale back to match the city of Bethlehem's at 10%. But we really like this ordinance. This is an update and an expansion of a previous LERTA in that area. We think this is a fiscally conservative and prudent way of creating incentives to encourage investment in a defined area that really the county doesn't lose anything. The whole argument with a LERTA in an enacting one is, but for this incentive, this development won't occur, and therefore you wouldn't receive the increased revenues. So you always retain your base that's there, and for those reasons, the department is very supportive of it. Question?
If I don't think this would happen, but if somebody buys a property and they go through major enhancements, and the city gives $50,000 a year, and that person then enjoys, I don't want to say deferment, but I forget the term, not paying taxes on 50% for the county and then 50% for the school district and 10% for the city. So then, let's say in year 4 or 5, the city, for some reason, is not putting up that $50,000. Then that person that homeowner or investor is hurt, right? Because then they're not shielding totally the 50%. They're only shielding 10%. Is that correct?
Our investment. So the school district has passed the ordinance. They're 50%.
Yeah.
No matter what. It would be on our
I'm sorry. You're right. Yes.
11.7 mils in Bethlehem, I think, is our millage rate. It would be that would get reduced to the 10%.
And
okay, I got you.
Mr. Dietz.
So what happens to someone who lives on the next block over that, so they got to pay the full tax on their renovations, and their neighbor just across the street, gets the benefit of it? I mean, how do we justify being fair to?
I think that this is a tool that goes in the community and economic development toolbox. It's not meant to be the end-all, be-all of anything. And, unfortunately with these incentives, you have to define where they go. In some cases, there's a boundary, and if you live in there, the idea behind it is you're trying to encourage or incentivize investment into this area. And, the way these things work, you define that area.
And have we identified what has caused the area to need the investment? Why has it gone down? And are we actually fixing that issue, or you know what I mean?
So I think the city is, and Alicia, you may want to come up and talk about this, but they're taking some very proactive steps. Again, this LERTA ordinance is one tool in their toolbox. They're forming a blight advisory committee to kind of focus on looking at this area and identifying what other tools that they need to put in place, whether it's stricter code enforcement, what other incentives they need to put in place. So it's a much more complicated issue. I don't know that they have the answer just yet, but they are taking some very smart steps to be able to identify that.
Because I would fully support addressing the blight and taking that on, but not only in a certain area, countywide, citywide, and basically even the same thing with a tax incentive. I think if we realize that there's an incentive of reducing taxes, then it basically should be countywide. That's my opinion.
So let me go back to the first point you were making regarding both sides of the street. One thing we did with this LERTA that we haven't traditionally done is ensure that both sides of the street are included. So, of course, there's a boundary, but if you live on, it used to be that if we drew a line and you lived on the east side of Linden Street, you wouldn't get the benefit, but if you lived on the western side, you would. So we made sure that all the properties fronting each other are part of the boundary and included. Now, again, you could argue that the property lines in the back, are the dividing line. We spent a lot of time, though, in this neighborhood looking to see what we thought was somewhat of a natural boundary and a community boundary, and where the deterioration was prevalent. And so if you look at our northernmost boundary, it really aligns where there is still investment, home ownership, owner-occupied homes. And so, in those instances, that isn't one of the issues we're trying to address. So I want to keep a couple of things in mind. This is a neighborhood that is bordered on several sides by commercial district, which is what you are probably most familiar with when you talk or when you think about a LERTA, is commercial reinvestment. We saw this as an opportunity to evoke Act 42, which is the residential component of LERTA, which most communities haven't done, and tried to understand how we layer LERTA. And reminding you that LERTA is one of the few things that you'll see, because we need your permission to include the county taxes, with things like the HUD Neighborhood Strategic Revitalization Area, which we're doing as the city of Bethlehem. Also looking at what the community groups were, the Bethlehem Area School District and Moravian College, which border to the northeast, and the two schools of William Penn and Thomas Jefferson, which were requested by the Bethlehem Area School District. And so trying to understand that natural boundary of what makes this community a good fit for LERTA, but also then having the leadership to tackle some of the issues that we've seen. I can talk to you about what the history of deterioration is, and it is many, many years. This did not happen overnight in this community. It's everything from changes in the way people want to live and where they want to live, including suburban flight, to job loss, to Moravian College's decision in 2006 to recommend pulling students back onto campus. There is a lot of reasons over decades in which this neighborhood got to this point. The foreclosure crisis didn't help. So here we are trying to employ one of several tools in the toolbox, as Mark suggested, to tackle the issues in this neighborhood. So I don't want you to think that it begins and ends with the boundary relating to LERTA. This is one of the ways, though, that Northampton County can help us address those issues.
Any other questions?
It's not a question. Ken can't be here tonight, but I know he said his heart's in this program because it was his old neighborhood, and he also believes it, and so do we, okay, to be honest with you. But, and I would never try to defend Alicia. She can do that on her own. So here's the concern, okay? Concern is you're worried about a home across the street or wherever. This is what you want as a homeowner and or a person in a neighborhood, to have incentives for someone to be able to do something that they couldn't do before. And I believe that's what's underlying all these programs. And I've seen it work, and I believe that Bethlehem is in sorely, I'm not demeaning it. I think they need it, and I think it's well worth it.
But I would challenge the neighbor ones across the street aren't, financially set that they couldn't benefit from the tax as well, and it would be, in essence, unfair that someone one street over is getting a tax advantage that they get hit for the whole thing.
We rarely see a request to make an incentive larger. We can certainly.
Like I said, listen, I support lower taxes all the way around, and that's why if it was a county-wide thing, and that was bring families and jobs to the county, I just, I said, one thing I don't think the LERTA itself addresses the issues that you said of why it got to that state. So addressing the blight, putting funding into that, and cleaning it up, I absolutely agree. And I think the LERTA and the commercial side to bring business in that creates the jobs makes sense. I just, have trouble with this one. So.
Well, if you want me to talk about blight, we just kicked off and we hired the Reinvestment Fund out of Philadelphia to conduct an analysis of the city. We didn't want to look at one neighborhood over another, and blight isn't just a residential problem. It's every kind of building stock issue, right? And so certainly the information that we gather, and we didn't request assistance at that level for this analysis, but certainly the information that we gather is going to be pertinent to this neighborhood. We did an analysis in 2012, which was presented to you as part of the basis of our thought process on this neighborhood. It's not lost on me that certain communities do LERTA. They're entire area. I just think that when we look at employing the resources we have in targeting neighborhoods, it is not necessarily best practice to come in and be a Harrisburg and lure to all of the properties within the community, because I'm not sure that you're really then, concentrating those efforts in certain neighborhoods that are not necessarily, we would argue this isn't the poorest of the poor. We hear a lot of what you just said, Mr. Warner, which is, I used to live in that neighborhood, and so what we're trying to do is focus efforts on this, and we believe that it's a strategy in partnership with those that I named to really see change in this neighborhood. And LERTA is an important part. I don't want to diminish it, but it's not the beginning and end of the efforts in this neighborhood.
Mr. Cusick.
A couple things. I think to summarize what Mr. Dced is saying, I think there's going to be winners and losers created. Whenever you create these special economic zones, look at the NIS in Allentown. There's winners and losers. Depending upon who draws the lines. We did a similar one in Easton. I don't really know how successful that is. I've heard good things and things that were, mixed. Another concern here, I always hate to see school districts give up revenue. I'll always stand up for them. They should stand up for themselves, because every year we hear the superintendent complain about not having enough revenue. I do believe that the CDBG grant is appropriate for this neighborhood, and I support your use there. I think that's a good idea. If we're going to try to compete with Allentown and all the incentives they have with state money, that's a losing battle. But my last issue or concern is this 10%, 50%, 50% arrangement. The state has a uniformity clause of taxation. How is what you're proposing uniform and fair to the three taxing bodies? Because we have CDBG grants we spend as well. So I'm trying to figure out how this is equitable, that the city is only committing 10%, the school district and the county are 50%.
There's certainly, I think, a lack of applicability of the state uniformity tax clause as it relates to LERTA, because, as you know, this is an enabling statute by the Commonwealth to put us in this position. And not all three taxing bodies have to agree. Unlike a KOZ, where you are obligated to participate and pass it for it to be an opportunity for the community to offer that, it's not the same with LERTA. What I would say is that when we look overall, and I can remind you that in the Palmertown Township TIF, for instance, and I'm not talking about the Route 33 interchange, I'm talking the Palmer Town Center, there is a different rate of tax rateable or give back depending on what the taxing body is. And the school district in that case gave up more money than Northampton County did. And so there's a long history of deviation from this straight, consistent tax abatement, whether it's under a TIF or a LERTA throughout Pennsylvania. All right, it's not a new approach. What we see as an opportunity is for the city to really target our resources. We have pledged through the leadership of Mr. Reynolds and Mayor Dced, President Reynolds, who's in the audience, to put cash into the neighborhood on infrastructure projects, on parks projects, on initiatives, on programming, on things that I think become a challenge year after year for us to come back to you and ask for support on. So we kind of thought we'll lead the way in this, in this realm, and we'll put the cash into the neighborhood. I can not guarantee, but would be terribly surprised if we found ourselves in a position where it was $50,000 that went into this neighborhood. Take out staff time and resources, take out, your typical road paving project, take out all of those things that we do throughout the city, and the efforts you're going to see will probably far outpace the $50,000 commitment. When we talk about LERTA, it's not about giving something that you have. It's incentivizing what you do not have. And so in our instance, regardless of what we're pledging to give up, we're going to keep giving more. So I think that's how the leaders in the city of Bethlehem can justify the reduction in tax abatement for the Bethlehem city tax, and why we ask for more from you in the school district.
Any other? Mr. Curtis?
Yeah, I have, to Matt, what you said, this side of the street, that side of the street, all these do involve picking of winners and losers. And, Matt, you said, and not only you, other people said this to me, if this is such a good program, why don't we extend it to the whole Northampton County? But then how would that affect the overall tax base? I mean, if the more you shield taxes, then it would cut down your revenue. I think that I suspect that these work in residential areas. Also, the whole problem in my mind, and this goes a little far afield, but I'm going to say it is, there's a Senate Bill 76 that almost got passed 2 years ago, which actually changes the funding of schools, which is the principal driver here, from property tax to a combination of sales and income tax. And Senator Lisa Boscola is behind that. Senator Scavilio is behind that. September 20th, Lisa is having a town hall where she goes through this. To me, that's the answer. That you're not picking winners and losers in regards to property tax.
I agree.
I don't think I can support this, to be honest with you.
Any other thoughts? Any others? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Always good to have you back here.
Madam Chair, the last item we have is our DCED continuing updates.
Okay.
Our affordable housing grant program closes Friday, September 15th. Mike is working very hard at that. Actually, not even here. Went back to work. Or he went home for his brand new baby. His healthy baby boy. Mike had Alexander Roland Van Brett is Mike Brett's new baby boy. So we're delighted in that eventuality. DCED has learned of an agreement between Lehigh County and Airbnb. We today received a copy of that, and we're going to. I've already set an appointment with Jim Hunter, and we're moving forward with looking out for Northampton County in that regard. I'd also like to mention that in the intervening time since our last meeting, Mark has been promoted to deputy, and he's focusing intently on economic development. He recently, in the last month or two, received certification for economic development finance, and we're very proud of him and naturally expect a hell of a lot more work. I mean, no, he's doing a great job. He really is. He's spending time above and beyond. And I'm very appreciative of that. I'll be attending the International Economic Development Council's annual convention, and Frank is going to Philadelphia to represent the county with HUD. They have an annual required meeting of all allocatees, and so Frank's going to go take care of that for us while I'm out of town. And Mike's going to be working with the affordable housing programs and will play a significant role in the $150,000 lead program that Frank and Mike helped develop and Mark worked on too. 1.5 million, I'm sorry. 1.5 million over 3 years, right? Yeah. So I'm very impressed. I have a great staff, and they do a lot of hard work, and so I hope you appreciate them very much, because I certainly do as well. And that's all I had for this evening, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank Mark. I'm very happy that you got promoted.
Yeah. Congratulations.
You've taught me a lot in the last 18 months. You have, and you've not swayed me on my tax incentive beliefs, but we've remained friends. So
and thank you again to Mr. Warner and Phillips for participating in our team evaluation activities, which are really hard to do. And again, going back to the sailing thing, they put yeoman's effort in, and we're very grateful for their expertise and intellect and wit, and it helps. Thanks.
Yeah, well done.
That's all I have.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we're done.
Adjourned. We're adjourned.
Adjourned?
Yeah, we are adjourned.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm not doing late this year.
Thank you.